Part 1. Indigenous Australia, before 1788. Long before European settlement, Australia was home to the world's oldest continuous cultures. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples lived across the continent for over 60,000 years, with deeply spiritual beliefs, intricate social systems, and sustainable lifestyles connected to the land and Dreamtime stories. These First Nations communities developed over 250 distinct languages, governed themselves through traditional laws, and managed land with sophisticated ecological knowledge. From desert nomads to coastal fishers, they thrived in every environment, passing down knowledge through art, song, and oral storytelling. This ancient world would be forever changed when Europeans arrived, but the strength of indigenous cultures has endured to this day. Part 2. British colonization and penal settlement, 1788 to 1850. On January 26, 1788, the first fleet of British ships landed in what is now Sydney, establishing a penal colony in New South Wales. Britain sent thousands of convicts to relieve overcrowded prisons, using Australia as a remote outpost of empire. Early years were harsh, with food shortages and conflicts with indigenous peoples. The British claimed the land under the false doctrine of terra nullius, ignoring the presence and sovereignty of Aboriginal nations. As more settlements spread into Tasmania, Victoria, and Queensland, violent frontier conflicts erupted, and indigenous populations were decimated by disease, displacement, and massacres. By the mid-1800s, free settlers began arriving in larger numbers, and Australia was transitioning from a prison colony to a settler society. Part 3. Expansion and the Gold Rush Era, 1851 to 1900. The discovery of gold in 1851 transformed Australia. The gold rush attracted migrants from Europe, China, and America, swelling the population in rapidly expanding towns like Melbourne and Ballarat. 6 separate colonies, New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania, developed their own governments, economies, and identities. Calls for self-governance grew louder, leading to the establishment of colonial parliaments and a growing sense of unity. Meanwhile, tensions rose between different cultural groups, leading to restrictive immigration policies such as the White Australia policy aimed at maintaining British dominance. This period laid the economic and political groundwork for nationhood, but it also deepened divisions, especially in the treatment of non-Europeans and Aboriginal peoples. Part 4. Federation and the Birth of a Nation, 1901. On January 1, 1901, the 6 British colonies united to form the Commonwealth of Australia under a shared constitution. This moment marked Australia's formal transition from a collection of colonies to an independent, federated nation, though still under the British Crown. The new federal system established a parliamentary democracy with a prime minister, a bicameral parliament, and a high court. While Australia had its own government, foreign policy and legal appeals still went through London. At the same time, the new nation passed its first major law, the Immigration Restriction Act, cementing the White Australia ideal and excluding non-European migrants for decades to come. The early 20th century was a period of pride and unity, but also of exclusion, with Indigenous Australians still denied citizenship, voting rights, and basic legal protections. Part 5. World Wars and National Identity, 1914 to 1945. In both World War I and II, Australia fought alongside Britain, sending thousands of troops overseas. The Gallipoli Campaign in 1915 became a defining moment, giving rise to the Anzac legend, a national story of bravery, sacrifice, and mateship. At home, the wars reshaped industry, gender roles, and Australia's view of itself. During World War II, the Japanese bombed Darwin in 1942, and German submarines reached Australian waters, bringing the war to its doorstep. After the fall of Singapore, Australia shifted its military alliance from Britain to the United States, a strategic move that would redefine its global relationships. These conflicts forged a stronger sense of Australian identity, distinct from Britain, and accelerated movements for Indigenous recognition, women's rights, and post-war reconstruction. Part 6. Post-war Immigration and Modernization, 1945 to 1990. After World War II, Australia embraced immigration to grow its economy and defend its borders. Under the slogan "Populate or Perish," millions arrived from Europe and later Asia, transforming Australia into a multicultural nation. The 1960s and 70s saw major reforms. The White Australia policy was gradually dismantled. Indigenous Australians gained citizenship, 1967, and land rights movements began to challenge the colonial legacy. Economically, Australia industrialized, built modern cities, and became a global trading nation. Politically, the country asserted more independence from Britain, especially after the Australia Act of 1986, which severed the last legal ties to the UK. Though progress was made, Indigenous communities continued to face discrimination, poverty, and systemic inequality, issues that would persist into the next century. Part 7. Contemporary Australia and the Path to Reconciliation, 1990, present. In the 1990s, Australia entered a new phase as a fully sovereign, multicultural democracy. It became a global leader in education, trade, and human development, consistently ranking among the world's most livable countries. Yet, unfinished business remained, particularly with its First Nations peoples. In 2008, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd delivered a historic sorry speech to formally apologize for the forced removal of Aboriginal children, known as the Stolen Generations. Australia has also faced debates over becoming a republic, environmental challenges like bushfires and climate change, and growing demands for constitutional recognition of Indigenous voices. Despite its colonial past and ongoing struggles, Australia continues to evolve, seeking reconciliation, equality, and a national identity that honors both ancient heritage and modern progress.